On a hot summer day in 216 BCE, near Cannae in Apulia, two armies met on open ground. The battle still matters because it became a lasting lesson in strategy, risk, and human limits. Cannae was not an isolated clash but part of a wider struggle between Rome and Carthage for power across the western Mediterranean. By then, years of war had already tested both states to the edge. Rome had suffered repeated setbacks in the Second Punic War, yet its Senate still expected recovery through endurance and manpower. Carthage, meanwhile, relied on a commander already famous for bold movement and patience. The Roman command rested with consuls under intense political pressure to force a decisive victory. On the other side, Hannibal commanded a coalition army far from home, dependent on success, supply, and trust. Rome brought heavy infantry in dense ranks, supported by cavalry that was often weaker than its enemies. Hannibal's force mixed Africans, Iberians, Gauls, and cavalry from different regions, each with distinct strengths. Weapons were practical rather than glamorous: spears, swords, shields, helmets, and body armor of different quality. Armies marched with baggage, food, water, and animals because logistics often decided how long they could endure. Morale mattered as much as equipment. Roman soldiers expected discipline and numbers to prevail, while Hannibal's men had already survived long marches and victories that made them believe in his judgment. The armies moved toward Cannae through southern Italy's summer heat, along roads shaped by trade, farming, and war. Villages, fields, and river crossings became part of the campaign's slow pressure. Cannae stood near the Aufidus River, where open land could support large formations. The surrounding plain offered room for cavalry and infantry alike, but little shelter from wind and sun. On the day of battle, weather and terrain likely favored neither side completely, though dust and glare would have shaped visibility. In such conditions, formation and timing became even more important. The two commanders wanted different kinds of victory. The Romans sought a direct clash that would break Hannibal's army by weight, while Hannibal aimed to absorb pressure and then trap his enemy. Hannibal arranged his center forward, with stronger troops on the wings and cavalry positioned to exploit the edges. It was a carefully balanced plan, relying on discipline and controlled retreat. Rome advanced in a deep mass, trusting that sheer force would crush the enemy line. That choice made sense to commanders who believed the battle would be decided by frontal pressure. At first, the Roman push seemed to work. Hannibal's center gave ground in an organized way, drawing the attackers forward into a narrower space than they intended. This opening phase was not chaos, but controlled strain. Both armies were testing distance, pressure, and timing, while cavalry action on the wings began to shape the wider field. The crucial pressure point came as the Roman center kept pressing inward. What looked like progress also meant compression, with men packed tighter and movement becoming harder to control. Meanwhile, cavalry action on the wings helped Hannibal gain advantage. Once one flank began to break, the balance of the entire battle shifted toward the Carthaginian plan. Hannibal's decisive movement was subtle rather than dramatic. The center kept drawing Rome forward while the stronger wings held firm. The battlefield itself was becoming a trap. As the Roman advance narrowed, their formation lost the room it needed to breathe. The result was not a single sudden blow, but a growing inability to turn, retreat, or reform. The breakthrough came when the Carthaginian wings and cavalry completed the encirclement. Rome's strength had been concentrated forward, but now that strength was boxed in on all sides. At that point, the battle ceased to be a contest of equal lines. It became a struggle for survival inside a shrinking space, where command, movement, and morale all began to fail. Some Roman units tried to force a path outward, while others held together as best they could. Ancient sources describe confusion and exhaustion, but the exact sequence remains partly uncertain. The collapse was not only military, but psychological. Once soldiers understood that escape was closing, the battle's momentum turned against them faster than any single command could stop. Hannibal's victory was extraordinary because it combined patience, coordination, and timing. Yet it also showed the limits of battlefield success when a larger political system could still absorb the blow. After the fighting, the field would have been filled with exhausted survivors, captives, and abandoned equipment. The silence after such a battle often reveals as much as the battle itself. Rome's immediate shock was severe, and many in the city feared the war itself might be lost. But the Republic did not collapse, and that resilience became part of Cannae's historical meaning. In the years that followed, Rome adapted by avoiding the kind of battle Hannibal wanted. It leaned more heavily on endurance, attrition, and the gradual recovery of territory and allies. Cannae also changed how later leaders thought about tactics. It became a classic example of double envelopment, though historians caution that the real battle was messier than any diagram. Scholars still debate details of troop numbers, exact placement, and how much each source can be trusted. Ancient accounts are invaluable, but they were written with their own agendas and limits. Some interpretations emphasize Hannibal's genius, while others stress Roman mistakes and battlefield conditions. Most historians agree that Cannae was a rare convergence of planning, opportunity, and execution. The battle's legacy lies partly in its warning. Superior numbers do not guarantee success if they are used without flexibility. That lesson has kept Cannae in military history for centuries. Today, the site near Cannae is quiet, shaped by agriculture and memory rather than armies. The landscape still invites reflection on how a single day can alter the course of a war. Standing there, one sees distance, openness, and the ordinary life of the plain. It is hard to imagine the scale of the ancient confrontation which is part of its enduring power. Cannae endures because it is both a battlefield and a study in decision-making under pressure. The event is ancient, but the questions it raises remain remarkably modern in their logic. Its story is not only about defeat, but about adaptation after disaster. Rome's response proved that one battle, however devastating, does not always decide a civilization's fate. For that reason, Cannae remains a touchstone for historians, soldiers, and anyone studying how plans succeed or fail. It is remembered not for spectacle alone, but for consequence.